All right, so I am here back and ready to discuss where we left off, and this was almost going towards the Noah Ark build. But before we touch base, there's some hidden secrets, I think. And again, folks, a lot of what I'm speaking, a lot of this that I'm speaking, is almost an open opinion. This is an open discussion that I want you guys to vent on with just the mind, to think of the mind. I've already freed everybody from any sin by telling you that we stay away from space, stay away from astrology, unless God calls us individually, which there won't be any open opportunity for somebody to speak on it with words. Hopefully God takes you in and puts you in the heavens with him, if anything. But we stay grounded on our own 2 feet on earth, and we must elaborate on the opportunity of a lifetime by going through the scripture reading in the Holy Bible, or whatever others who might opinionize on it. And I've already also explained the prayer book, and the prayer book is just one of those things that helps you communicate better with God, and it's vouchsafed to you as an individual who is looking for safety from the holy guardian angel, the Holy Spirit, the Father, the Son. But I've got it backwards. It's the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and then Holy Guardian Angel would be that order. But the prayer book is also another great literature to definitely have as part of your collection. But before we go further, I did touch base with you guys on Adam's last instruction by God in chapter 3, at the end of chapter 3, where God said to him, after telling him his curse, or what he was cursed with for heeding to the woman's way of breaking God's, or not listening to God's instruction, of not touching base of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They went in because of Eve and the serpent. Adam got caught up in that. And on the last chapter here, or the chapter 3, verse 23 and 24, there was instructions given to Adam, and there was a sign driving Adam and Eve, and I believe the serpent also, away from the Garden of Eden with flaming swords. That was instructed. But this opportunity and the instruction that God gave him, I wondered, and during this break I was thinking to myself, I said, why did he give Adam that instructions to till the ground? So I said to myself, with explaining more about this open discussion about evolution and a life before the life of Adam and Eve, of who might have touched base on the soil of the Garden of Eden first, I thought to myself that it might have been a good thing to think that Adam had the open opportunity to actually go in and dig through the soil and find fossils, find life or previous life within the soil, and he may have had a chance of a lifetime to have a connection with God by presenting it to him. But yet he created Cain, or Cain was bored, and he took him in as his son, and Cain had the same instructions as Adam to till the land, or the ground, and Cain only brought up the fruit of the the fruit of the, hold on, let me read it so that we're clear. And it says, Genesis 4 verse 3, and in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord, because he became a tiller, and they recognized him. And I made a mistake. I said Adam may have said in chapter 4, the beginning of chapter 4, I have acquired a man from the Lord. But it says, now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, and said, so when she conceived and bore Cain, and said, she said, I have acquired a man from the Lord. So that man was to till the land. Cain was a tiller of the ground. But had Adam done that and more thorough or more of an open mind, I believe Adam would have discovered something within the ground that he could have presented to the Lord and could have questioned, and it would have expanded more of what was there. And going back to Cain, after Cain killed Abel, and I said that it was a primitive because he rose up on his brother. That's almost a primitive stance that gorillas, apes, monkeys, that they do when they're in defense mode. Not bears. Bears do that. Bears get on their 2 feet and then they raise their butt. We're not talking about bears, because the bears are always on all 4. And not necessarily, it's almost missing bears too. So bears would almost be almost a crossbred maybe of 2-legged animals like primates or gorillas of such. But I do want to make sure that I touch base on Cain's situation, because Cain was, which means Cain was a tiller of the soil, and the soil that Cain tilled, the Lord, of course, pretty much didn't have any respect for his work. And this only means that psychologically, as an episode of primitive, who's to say that it dated back almost a primitive episode that God has realized is duplicated itself again. It's almost that easily descripted by rose up and then killed his brother, and then he's seen that there was bloodshed on the ground, and he says that he had to take care of that bloodshed for Cain because of Cain's doing. But it's not like Cain hid. So in that wake of the moment, God says in Genesis 4 chapter 9, then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? He said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hands. When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. A fugitive and a vagabond you shall be on the earth. And Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Surely you have driven me out this day from the face of the ground. I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth, and it will happen that anyone who finds me will kill me. And then God made things easier on verse 15, and the Lord said to him, therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark on Cain, lest anyone finding him should kill him. Going back on verse 13, at the end of the verse, I don't know why bear is spelled B-E-A-R as the animal. And I'm going to read that verse again. And Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. And so I don't know, it doesn't seem like a typo, but it may be one of those literature that you have to look in between the lines and see the transition of the way things are and why people are looking past certain things and not focusing and being afraid to. So this is a big thing. Now, with that being said, Cain was led off to the wilderness, but moving forward, this is the important part. The reason I bring Cain's genealogy into effect is because Cain has bad blood. He killed his brother. His brother's blood went into the soil, which is almost like a primitive of who was Cain. Was Cain another animal? Mind you, they ate the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They ate the fruit of it. So if they ate the fruit of that tree, they are backtracking in time with what God has kept as almost his own biblical timeline and placed it in a place of the Garden of Good and Evil. The Garden of Eden, and again, going back as what I said, when he placed it there to create man in the likeness of him and the other individual he's talking about. And let me go back one more time. I want to stay accurate with where we're going on the reading because we're sticking straight through, and I think we're doing a great job. So Genesis 1, verse 26. Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. And I'm going to stop right there. So that's pretty much our likeness, and there was somebody coinciding with him that made it our likeness. So now, Cain's a fugitive, as he says on Genesis 4, verse 14. Surely you have driven me out this day from the face of the ground. I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth, and it will happen that anyone who finds me will kill me. So then God gives him a pardon, and then Cain went out from the presence of the Lord. This is on verse 16 in chapter 4, and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he built a city, and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. So Cain was in the craftiness of doing his own thing, and he built a city. So this is going back to, I believe I spoke to Noah. No, I didn't speak about the Noah situation yet. So Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begot Mehuel, and Mehuel begot Methuselah. It's a very difficult pronunciation for a lot of these names, but please bear with me. Methuselah, and then Methuselah begot Lamech. So Lamech then took two wives, and name of one was Ada, and the name of the second was Zillah. And Ada bore Jabal, and he was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. and his brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all those who play the harp and flute. And as for Zillah, she also bore Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every craftsman in bronze and iron, and the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. So this is important to put Tubal-Cain in the forefront, because craftsmen in bronze and iron, later on we're going to hear about a town or a tower or civilization that was built, the Tower of Babel. I'll give it out right now, which to me shows a connection. And this is after the flood. The Tower of Babel was another city that was built, or another community, a town, but I think to reference it as more of a bigger expansion, it was a city, the tower that was built, and they spoke only one language, so they said. And I think because of Cain's genealogy, because of the bad blood that Cain had, his aggression kind of made it in a selfish way where he kind of secluded himself. But with the wilderness of a primitive individual, where does Cain learn to use and become a craftsman in bronze and iron? So that's what I'm saying, that Cain, being born from Adam and Eve, after they did the most evil in God's eye by disobeying God and eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they may have had a past within them that wasn't supposed to be released because of that instructions to stay away from it. And who took in that instructions and who took in and got that from their parents or from a descendant, as a descendant? Cain. Cain was able to and of course, Lamech had bore a son that, let me see, who's the son? Bore a son from Ada, Jubal. He was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. So that was almost Abel on the other hand. So there's a genealogy. I don't want to get into, let me just venture out the Bible for a second and go into doctor work. There's what you call a genochart, and it deals with almost like, not blood count, but almost count within the genes of the father or the mother, on whether the mother is an artist or the father is a teacher. Somewhere within that genochart, there's going to be one kid that's going to take the father's side strong through the genes, or the other is going to take the mother's side strong to the genes. So with what they did, that disobeyed God's orders and cursed them, their seeds were able to take something out of it, because Cain automatically went out and built a city and named it after his first son, Enoch. And then moving forward, so this is another important part in Genesis 4 verse 23. This right here shows almost bad blood that was driven in Cain's genealogy. And Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, "Hear my voice, wives of Lamech. Listen to my speech, for I have killed a man for wounding me, even a young man for hurting me. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, then Lamech 77-fold. It's almost so bold that it was driven through blood. And through blood meaning that Cain was almost strong after he built a city. Think about it. You build a house, you're going to be strong. I don't know how big the city was, but to call it a city, you build a city, you're going to be strong. But if you were casted out without God's help, nowhere on this part of the chapter 4, when Cain was let off, only not to kill Cain, or else there's going to be vengeance taken on him, set on whoever kills Cain in the wilderness sevenfold. That was the only thing God set a mark on for Cain. And after that, Cain went on, and to have that as almost a power to carry on to, where you strengthen your own self, you build a city, you do instructive craftsmanship, and then carry that into your genealogy. That's very strong in a sense, where this right here, I wanted to focus on this genealogy, because when it moves on to chapter 5, it does explain, it recaps on Adam's genealogy. Why would it recap on Adam's genealogy in chapter 5? Not because Adam died, but because Adam pretty much has a past of curse. So I won't go over the genealogy because it's a lot of names, and none of them were too, I want to say, too recognized by God. I could say Enoch in Genesis 5, chapter 24, it says, "And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him." So Enoch was almost blessed by walking with God. And is it because of what was blessed of Cain, letting off in the wilderness? When you walk with God, that's just it. You walk with God. So if Cain was scared because he knows walking to the wilderness, there's going to be something bigger than him that's going to take him, he walks with God and doesn't communicate with God at that point. That's it. So it's almost like Cain was only blessed with the sightful protection, almost of a shield, through God, which is very important. But Lamech lived 182 years and had a son, and he called his name Noah. So Lamech was the next, wasn't in close communication with God, but God went from Enoch, one side of the genealogy, to the next side. So they didn't ignore Lamech, but Lamech was almost waving his hand when he says, but he went against and had the primitive notion to kill, to transgress. So again, going back to chapter 4, verse 23, Lamech was explaining to his two wives his transgression speech, and he brought his relative into it, Cain, saying, if this was to happen, then let it be known that I'm going to be covered 77-fold. So that's one thing to look into. Let me see where Lamech falls. So it's a grandfather, a great grandfather of Lamech. Cain would be in the grandfather stage for Lamech. And so now we're moving on to the Noah. But before I move on to Noah, and I'm sorry if I pause this portion again, Cain never had that psychological. He almost had a transgression of saying, so, I killed my brother, he never had a psychological conversation and saying to God what really went in his head to do so. If Cain had seen something while tilling the dirt and was able to tell him, then that was it. But I think the curse alone, whether he tilled the dirt and already got exposed, you are the descendant of two individuals that I cursed. And that is very important to understand. Now, why is that? So he was sent off to the wilderness, now a bondsman, but yet no laws to lock him into civilization. So he built his own civilization. He built his own city. So there's no laws within that. So where Cain develops a genealogy and develops a family, his family is living with no law. So Cain was really supposed to walk on a path of righteousness after being born from Adam and Eve. He was supposed to be on the path of righteousness, which will recognize him by God and go from there. Because if you know, as we go further in and we pass through the generations, the antediluvians to the patriarchs, those were, in God's eyes, and the way God communicates or sees them in his eyes, as noble, or not noble, as righteous and just individuals, is if they do it through works. So if you are just to work the land, you're born and you are a shepherd or a sheep herder or something of that nature, and you do no kill, you do nothing, you are one who walks on the path of righteousness. That's it. But, and I'm going too far, but I just want to make sure we have this information, which is very important. When the second coming came around, the reason why that built into faith instead of not instead, you're still on the path of righteousness, but through faith, not works. So why is it through faith, not works? Because works was already corrupted in Job, the chapter Job. Why is works corrupted in Job? Prostitution, the harlot. So not only prostitution, the harlot. You got to keep in mind, Cain's genealogy still runs strong within the Bible. You might lose it, but they mimic a lot of what he did, and a lot of what he built was then taken over. And again, the Tower of Babel was almost a genealogy that went after the flood, that kind of lived like Cain, but they were kind of feared God. So God put the flood there without warning to those people he did not communicate with, but just seeing their actions, and set the flood, but only took Noah out and gave Noah instructions. So now we're going into the Noah phase right here. And before we go to Noah phase, one of the things that I did want to mention is Seth is another brother. So on Genesis 4, chapter 25, it says, "And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and named him Seth. For God has appointed another seed for me instead of Abel, whom Cain killed. And as for Seth, to him also a son was born, and he named him Enosh. Then men began to call on the name of the Lord." So Seth was almost a blessing through Adam and Eve's eyes. So Enosh was Seth's seed, and he was connected to God. the Lord. They began to call the Lord. Did the Lord answer? Hasn't explained it yet. So, did the Lord answer Enosh as they called the Lord? It hasn't explained it yet. But we are more focused on the transgression of Cain's genealogy, which spewed because Noah is now born from Lamech. And Noah was born from Lamech, and Lamech was 182 years and had Noah. And Noah's name is pretty much, this one will comfort us concerning our work and the toil of our hands because of the ground which the Lord has cursed. And so that was pretty much it. So then Noah had 3 sons he begot, and he was 500 years old, and he had begot Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay? Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So once Noah bore or begot those 3 sons, let me see here. And we just want to make sure we divide things up. So from the creation of man to the start of the flood is antediluvian, which is important because of what the environment and how the environment interacted with human behavior, such as the Cain incident. It's just one of those things that shows you where primitive or evolution wasn't in that gap in the beginning. That was the start of the gap, antediluvian. So because of the transgression of the Cain family, Noah was born, and God had seen Noah as a just individual. And I'll see it right here on this chapter where it tells us that. There we go. So it's Genesis chapter 6, verse 9. This is the genealogy of Noah. Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations. Noah walked with God, and Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And moving forward, the earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood, make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside and out with pitch. And that was the start of the ark. So the violence that took place, that God witnessed during the Noah era, and Noah is going to be one of those where he's got the best covenant with God, because he was almost telling God that this can't happen again because of his genealogy. So I think because of his genealogy, he was moving forward with his 3 sons that God has blessed him with. And he said within, which is not, I'm going too far in. But before we go too far in, I want to kind of show you where the separation with God was kind of shaky, because chapter 6, it says in the beginning, now it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the Son of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. So it's almost like the split. Men is Cain's side, Adam's side, but Son of God is almost Eve's blessing from God. And that's a good thing. Why? Because it started with Seth, where Seth had a son was born called Enosh, and then it says, then men began to call on the name of the Lord, and Seth was Abel, and Abel's blood cried to the Lord for a cleanup, and that's where he went. So that's one of those things. If there's sorrow within, I guess that's where the Lord steps in and looks out much further than he would for someone like Cain. And if you look at the Cain side, it's almost like rebellious, primitive, hoot and holler, but it's very strong in such a way. So that's one of the things I wanted to point out, because it's showing on there as different sides. So Noah was on that genome chart, like I said. If doctors ever get to explain it to a pregnant woman or a husband and wife, they would explain why this one might have brown hair and that one doesn't. If your wife is brown hair and you have black hair, and moving forward going further into that conversation. So there is a split in that right there. It's like good, you have a bad brother, but you're the good son or good brother on that side. So let me kind of brush up here with Noah's situation. And so yeah, the chapter 6 explains pretty much the side of the family of Adam's genealogy to Cain's genealogy that was a little bit of a rough housing. And as we can see in chapter 6, it does says men began to multiply. Now, is it a thing of thought where they said, wait a minute, if there's work to be done, we need to multiply? What if they didn't think like that? What if they thought in the soft side and said, well, let's see what God thinks about us multiplying? That's another thing you want to take a look into, because that's very true in fact on waiting on God's call to see what to do. All right? So, now Adam gets the word about the flood, and he builds a ark, and the ark explanation, again, I was explaining square feet, and when I explain square feet, 1 square feet is small, of course. It's almost not even a big plot. But when you add hundreds and, or thousands of square feet, then it's a big. So that's what I was explaining. Almost 2,000 square feet to 4,000 square feet could fit in 15 people comfortably to walk back and forth. So this ark was pretty much broken down in cubits and width and sizing, and then so there's an explanation on that, and I'm going to stop right there because of the portion where it gets good and the covenant and the promise God's promise to Noah is coming in chapter 7, 8, and then 9. It's blessed. So we're almost drawing down here, and there's some important facts that we want to speak on with Noah's sons. And Noah's sons are pretty much in that realm of another Cain episode, but I don't want to get too into it right then and there. I just want to make sure that we are on track and we are seeing decide, because of that tree of knowledge and good and evil, why people like Cain was kind of disoriented in the mind, or kind of a transgressor because of what they took in that they weren't supposed to take in. So please bear with me. Thanks for stopping by and listening. Also, I am going to provide an email. So if anybody wants to voice any opinion or send me any emails, they may do so. And then, as you know, I start to see, or if I start to see any individuals who like the streaming service and want to come back and speak to me, or write to me or email me, they may do so. Again, this is Olive Palm Tree Mobile Tabernacle, and this is St. James of the Orthodox. And I will tune in when I get a chance so we could speak on the flood, and then move forward to God's promise to Noah, and then touch base on that next city, the Tower of Babel. You guys have a great evening, day, afternoon, wherever or whatever time you might be tuning in. But please tune in when you get a chance, and we'll go from there. Thank you.